Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the demonstrative riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. This week, 2 Liberal MPs have broken with the Prime Minister and his harmful strategy to divide and inflame Canadians. The 2 MPs have not suddenly become Conservatives. These men are Liberals, and they're asking what has become of the Liberal Party. Here's an example. I'm going to repeat what Justin Trudeau said in question period. Quote, "We are working to overcome this challenge peacefully. At the same time, we are making sure the essentials can get through so the shortages so many people are worried about do not occur." End quote. Here's something else the Prime Minister said in question period. Quote, "Our responsibility is to continue working on a peaceful and lasting solution to this troubling situation. That's exactly what we're doing while securing different ways of keeping essential commodities moving on our railway to help Canadians across the country." End quote. Those quotes are from 2 years ago. Many remember that a group from the Mohawk Reserve in Ontario had blockaded rail lines in Ontario. They did this in support of another protest in BC. The blockade lasted 18 days, and during that time, the Prime Minister called for calm. He called for patience. He did not negotiate with the Mohawks in Ontario. Instead, he sent his minister to negotiate with the protesters in BC. Once the government and the hereditary chiefs in British Columbia had reached an agreement, the OPP were finally comfortable with moving in and arresting the protesters. That's why these Liberals are speaking out. We've seen how a small group of protesters can disrupt a national economy. But we've also seen how the government can peacefully end those disruptive protests. It's time to follow the science and the evidence. The government needs to present a plan to quickly end the lockdowns and the restrictions. Other countries are doing it. Canada is the only country requiring fully inoculated Canadian travelers to be subjected to forced invasive testing upon arrival at our legal border crossings. Refusal to comply can lead to a financial penalty people traveling on commercial airlines can rarely afford to pay. Provinces are ending the lockdowns and restrictions, and this Liberal government needs to do it too. The Prime Minister has used the pandemic to wedge, divide, and stigmatize Canadians, and this must stop. Elected officials must all come together, work together to transition to a post-COVID society as quickly as possible. The protests outside Parliament buildings began with truckers and have grown into an international phenomenon. Men and women, children, old and young, people from every walk of life and every community of this country have been rallying to have their voices heard. They want their freedoms back. We want our freedoms back. No more wedges, no more division, no more stigmatizing. The people the demonstrators want to help are being hurt. Farmers, manufacturers, small businesses, and families are suffering. This is not what the people bringing aid to the demonstrators meant to happen. People are protesting because they love this country, and we want our freedoms back. They came to Ottawa bringing a message. That message has been heard. Conservatives have heard you, and we're standing up for you. All Canadians who want to get back to life as we know it will not stop until we have ended the mandates, all the mandates. All the blockades can be taken down now. Continue demonstrating peacefully and legally. Let the streets be open for the sake of the people never meant to be hurt. It's the right thing to do. Every elected official has a role to play in ending this impasse. We have a role to play in restoring peace and order and allowing Canadians to get back to their normal lives. Canadians have sacrificed, but it seems that it's not good enough for this government. In a country more divided than ever before, it seems the Prime Minister decided to purposefully politicize the pandemic crisis for his own political gain. This summer, as BC was burning, Afghanistan was falling, and we were in the fourth wave of the pandemic, the Prime Minister called an unnecessary $600 million election to exploit a crisis. Despite what the Prime Minister says, this country, our beautiful Canada, is divided and weary, and the blame rests squarely on the Prime Minister's shoulders. Conservatives are ready to bring about a peaceful end to the protests and the mandates. We're ready to work with all those who want to see a united Canada once again. Our new interim leader, the Honourable Candice Bergen, has asked the Prime Minister to meet with her, and as well with the leaders of the other parties to come up with a resolution to the impasse. Unfortunately, he has rejected all requests to talk. The problem's not going to go away. It's getting worse. The Prime Minister needs to work collegially with Conservatives and other leaders to resolve this highly pressing issue. National unity is the number one job of a Prime Minister. Since the election, Trudeau has only tried to divide Canadians more. Now his own members of Parliament are speaking out. A Prime Minister is the only person who can heal the divisions Trudeau created. Liberal MPs are asking Trudeau to be that Prime Minister. Trudeau better act before Liberal MPs decide to find another Prime Minister who will. This week, my colleagues heard testimony at the Public Safety Committee. Toronto Police Chief, Deputy Chief Myron Denke, was asked about the Liberals' billion-dollar gun grab. Here's his response.
And the reason I ask about the dollar value is because we're seeing the federal government now, they're looking to do the gun buyback program, so to speak, that's going to cost upwards of $1 billion. Some say $3 billion. They're proposing a provincial handgun ban and $1 billion to go along with that. And I'm not hearing a single police association across the country saying that that's the best use of taxpayer dollars. They're outlining things that you're outlining as well. So again, if you can just comment with the last 30 seconds, more of where you think the best use of taxpayer dollars should be going.
So I'll address what you just addressed with the sourcing of where our guns are coming from that are harming our communities, and they're not domestically sourced. They are internationally sourced. So our problem in Toronto are handguns from the United States. So the issues around investing in what you described is certainly not going to deal with the crime problem we're facing in Toronto as it relates to criminal handguns and the use of criminal handguns. And we believe an investment upstream is a very valuable focus of resources.
The deputy chief was being diplomatic. So let me be blunt. Black and Indigenous children are being murdered in urban Liberal ridings. And Trudeau's solution is to send $1 billion to people who live in rural Conservative-held ridings in order to win votes in suburban battleground ridings. The deputy police chief was correct to say $1 billion gun grab will not impact handgun shootings. Toronto handguns are coming from the United States. But the actual problem is gang violence. The UK has a strict gun control policy and no border with the United States. Kids in the UK are not shooting each other. They're using machetes. They're stabbing and hacking one another to death. Buybacks and border patrols are not the solution to gang violence. The longer it takes Liberal MPs and their friends in the legacy media to admit the truth, the more children will die. Speaking of Liberal MPs, this week, every Liberal MP voted to allow Health Canada to use your mobile phone location data without your consent. The Public Health Agency and Health Canada used the info showing people going to the malls during Christmas and used it as evidence to lock down Canadians this past January. Fortunately for Canadians, the Liberals are still a minority in the House of Commons. Every other MP voted to have Health Canada stop collecting phone location data without consent. That's what Liberals seem to not understand. Democracy requires the consent of the governed. Trudeau seems to have forgotten that, or maybe he never learned it in the first place. But Canadians have not forgotten. Democracy requires the consent of the governed. And more Canadians are reminding Trudeau of that fact. Send a message loud and clear to Trudeau and every other Socialist MP. Download the petition at cherylgallant.com/fedup. Get at least 25 signatures in hard copy and send it into the address shown. For every 25 signatures on a petition, I can rise in the House of Commons chamber and tell the government to end the mandates. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.